All right, let's dive in. We're exploring Islam in the 21st century today, and our guide is Shaykh Khalid Yasin's book.
Oh, interesting.
And this isn't like your typical Islam 101.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Yasin has traveled to 139 countries,
Wow.
and he's been so involved in social activism.
Yeah.
His perspective is just incredibly unique, you know?
It is fascinating how he goes beyond just explaining the faith.
Yeah.
He really gets into how to, like, actually live as a Muslim today, right?
Right.
Particularly in Western societies.
Yeah, and it's not just his global experience.
Right.
He converted to Islam in 1965
Uh-huh.
as an African-American, so his personal journey
Yeah.
adds another layer of depth to this, don't you think?
Absolutely. And one of the things that really struck me was how he challenges Muslims to move beyond just appearances and rituals, you know?
Oh, yeah.
He's really calling for a more active, engaged faith.
He uses that great phrase, real Islam, to emphasize that point.
Yeah.
It's about embodying the principles in, like, everything you do,
Right.
Not just going through the motions.
Yeah, he even critiques what he calls this devastating cycle of consumption, like
Oh, wow.
praying on Friday and then rushing to support businesses that
Yeah.
don't necessarily align with Islamic values.
So instead of just being consumers,
Right.
he's saying, like, Muslims need to be active contributors,
Precisely.
shaping their communities and economies, taking that economic power back.
Exactly. Supporting Muslim businesses, investing in skills and technology,
Yeah.
building local economies. These are the solutions he proposes.
And this kind of leads into another concept he brings up, the Gaza syndrome. What is that all about?
It's basically his critique of selective outrage.
Okay.
He points out how, like, we might react strongly to certain injustices,
Right.
like the situation in Palestine, but then, like, remain silent about others, you know?
Sure.
Almost like our empathy has these blind spots.
Yeah, he has a powerful question.
Yeah.
Is the blood of a Palestinian child more sacred than the blood of a Uyghur child? It makes you think about where your priorities lie.
Exactly. He's pushing for a more universal approach to social justice, like understanding that oppression is all interconnected.
Right. You can't just address one without acknowledging the whole system.
Right.
Okay, now he also throws out this term, the Catholicism of Islam, which honestly made me do a double take.
Yeah, he's drawing this parallel with the historical evolution of the Catholic Church and its centralized power structure.
Okay.
He's concerned that some Muslim institutions are becoming, like, too rigid, too focused on, like, controlling the narrative.
And that stifles critical thinking.
All right.
Especially in today's world where information is so accessible.
Right.
It's more important than ever to be able to, like, think for yourself.
Exactly. And that's why he puts so much emphasis on a new model of Islamic education.
Okay.
One that goes beyond rote memorization and focuses on critical thinking and fostering this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, you know? It's about equipping young Muslims to actually, like, engage with the complexities of the modern world, but, like, also stay true to their faith.
Yeah. Speaking of young Muslims, Yasin seems like quite worried about them being drawn to extremist ideologies without a real understanding of Islamic principles.
And I appreciate how he approaches it, you know? He doesn't just, like, condemn them. He tries to, like, actually understand why these young people are searching for something, you know?
Yeah.
And he encourages them to, like, channel their energy into education, employment, family, things that provide a sense of purpose and belonging.
It's about showing them that authentic Islamic practice actually offers solutions to the challenges they're facing.
Absolutely.
And he applies that same logic to marriage, right? Like, he criticizes these cultural practices like excessive dowries that are making it harder for young people to find partners. He even talks about the complexities of marrying non-Muslims and, like, the importance of turning to the Sunnah for guidance in all these different aspects of marriage.
It is.
That's pretty bold, don't you think?
Yeah, but he's consistent in his call to return to the core principles of Islam as, like, the foundation for navigating modern life.
Okay, so we've talked about, like, personal responsibility, but what about, like, the community as a whole? How does he see Muslims building a strong presence in the West?
He uses the example of the early Muslims who migrated to Abyssinia.
Okay.
They integrated into society. They made positive contributions and, like, earned the respect of the local community.
Right.
And eventually, even the king embraced Islam.
So it's about showing the beauty of Islam through actions, not just words?
Yeah, building institutions, becoming entrepreneurs, engaging in social reform, all while staying true to their values.
He's saying that, like, Muslims can be fully engaged citizens of their respective countries and deeply committed to their faith. Like, there doesn't have to be a conflict.
It's a very nuanced approach that challenges that whole us versus them mentality that we see so often.
Okay, and he's not just talking about building institutions outside the home. Like, he's also very focused on building strong families as well.
He stresses the importance of marriage, saying, like, it completes half of one's faith and allows us to, like, further the human race ethically.
He even, like, breaks down the 4 essential elements of marriage in Islam. Including niyah, intention, and consummation. Like, you know, there's no such thing as a convenience marriage in Islam.
He's very clear about that. And he doesn't shy away from the challenges, you know, that young Muslims face regarding marriage, like the uncontrolled maths, the misuse of technology, and cultural complications.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
It is.
But his approach is, like, refreshingly direct and honest.
Yeah, he's challenging us to really, like, examine our own assumptions and to engage with Islam in a way that's both intellectually stimulating and spiritually grounding.
We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
And there's still more to explore. What else stands out to you about Yasin's vision for Muslims in the 21st century?
Well, one thing that really resonates with me is his focus on the influx of new Muslims in the West. He sees this as, like, a sign of Allah's mercy, a source of revitalization for the Ummah.
He even mentions this striking statistic that more people are embracing Islam in Western societies than in all Muslim countries combined.
It is a huge shift.
Isn't it?
Yeah, and he sees it as a sign of hope, but also a responsibility. He urges new Muslims to, like, hold on to the good values they brought with them, those things that drew them to Islam in the first place.
He believes those experiences and perspectives are valuable assets.
Yeah, he encourages new Muslims to, like, actively contribute, to use their unique strengths to benefit the Ummah.
And he has a message for born Muslims as well.
Absolutely.
He calls for this sense of collective responsibility to nurture and support these new members.
He sees the potential of new Muslims to shape the future of Islam in the West. And he really emphasizes the need for the entire community to, like, embrace them and help them grow and thrive.
So he's painted this picture of a more engaged, active faith. But he also, like, delves into some of the internal challenges within the Muslim community.
He does. He talks about what he calls traumatized scholars. And this is, like, a really interesting concept. He's talking about scholars who have experienced, you know, like some kind of intellectual or spiritual trauma, maybe through, like, persecution or by witnessing, like, hypocrisy within, like, religious institutions.
And he argues that this trauma can lead to, like, a rigid mindset, a resistance to new ideas.
Exactly. And it creates this, like, kind of religious chauvinism where certain interpretations are seen as, like, the only valid ones. And anyone who disagrees is, like, ostracized.
So it's a form of, like, intellectual gatekeeping.
Precisely. And he challenges this tendency, you know. He urges scholars to be, like, more open, more humble in their approach to knowledge.
Especially in today's world, like we were saying, where we're constantly bombarded with information and diverse viewpoints. We need to be able to, like, engage in dialogue, question, and critically examine these different perspectives.
Absolutely. I think that's a message that, like, applies not just to scholars, but to all of us, wouldn't you say?
For sure. Now, he doesn't just critique individuals. He also takes on, like, these institutional dynamics. He talks about the sovereignty of belief and how it relates to the role of, like, an Islamic government.
He makes this clear distinction between, like, compelling belief, which he rejects, and an Islamic government's right to, you know, establish parameters that protect the essence of the faith. It's a complex issue, but he handles it with a lot of nuance.
So he's, like, walking this fine line, recognizing the need for boundaries, but also emphasizing, like, individual freedom of conscience.
Exactly. And he warns against the dangers of like religious elitism, this idea that like some people have a monopoly on truth and can judge others based on their outward adherence to a set of rules.
It goes back to that idea of real Islam being about character and action.
Exactly.
Not just empty rituals or dogmatic pronouncements.
It's refreshing to hear someone like address these issues so frankly and thoughtfully.
Now, besides like these internal challenges, Yasin also looks at the bigger picture, right?
He does.
He talks about the role of business and entrepreneurship in Muslim societies.
It's fascinating how he like highlights the fact that the Quran contains more verses about business and commerce than...
Wow. The name of Prophet Muhammad himself.
Oh, wow.
It's a side of Islam that's often overlooked, wouldn't you say?
For sure, yeah. He even goes into detail about like the business legacy of the Prophet's family and companions, showing how successful they were in these various fields.
It's a good reminder that like economic empowerment isn't just this modern concept. It's rooted in Islamic tradition.
And he sees economic independence as essential, not just for like individual well-being, but for the ability to like fulfill Islamic obligations like zakat and hajj.
He even talks about supporting like jihad, both in the literal and metaphorical sense, through economic means.
So it's about Muslims like taking control of their own destinies.
He's challenging the current state of affairs where Muslims, despite their large population and resources, often lack economic power and influence on the global stage.
So what's the solution? What does he propose Muslims do to reclaim that economic power? He urges them to like break free from this consumption cycle and invest in building their own businesses, supporting Muslim-owned enterprises. It's about creating these local economic ecosystems that empower the community from within.
That's a powerful vision, and it ties back to that idea of real Islam being about action.
Exactly.
About creating positive change.
And he doesn't just focus on the economic side. Like, he also emphasizes the importance of strong and effective institutions as well.
He argues that real Islam needs a framework, right?
Right. It's not just about individual piety. It's about building institutions that serve the community, promote social justice, and engage with wider society.
So he uses that example of the first hijrah, where Muslims migrated to Abyssinia.
Right.
They didn't isolate themselves.
Right.
They integrated into society.
They established themselves economically, and they earned the respect of the local community.
Right.
Even the king eventually embraced Islam.
It's a powerful example of how Muslims can maintain their values while also contributing.
It doesn't have to be a conflict.
To the society they live in.
Right.
And he encourages Muslims today to build real institutions.
Yes.
Not just mosques and Islamic centers, but also like hospitals, schools, businesses, organizations that address the needs of the community.
It's about creating this like holistic ecosystem where Muslims can thrive in all aspects of life.
And he's not afraid to like point out the shortcomings of the current approach.
Right.
Things like, you know, the myth of congregational community where Muslims pray together but don't connect on a deeper level.
Right, or the tendency to prioritize spending at non-Muslim businesses.
So he's calling for a more meaningful and impactful engagement.
Exactly.
Both within the Muslim community and with the wider society.
Right.
And he also tackles the complexities of political engagement.
He does.
Urging Muslims to understand, like, their rights and responsibilities as citizens while navigating the challenges of, like, power dynamics and systemic injustices.
He even introduces this concept of social dissidence.
Wow.
Encouraging Muslims to, like, speak out against injustice and corruption, even when it's risky.
He reminds us that the prophets and scholars throughout history weren't afraid to challenge the status quo, advocate for social justice.
Yeah, it's a call for critical thinking, for discernment, and for like a more engaged and empowered approach to leadership.
And this brings us to like one of his most pressing concerns.
Right.
The youth challenge.
He seems deeply troubled, like the growing number of young Muslims drawn to like extremism and violence.
He's concerned about the lack of purpose and belonging they feel.
Yeah, the way they're often disconnected from their families and communities.
He sees them as vulnerable to like manipulation by charismatic figures who offer this like distorted view of Islam.
And his approach is both compassionate and pragmatic.
Okay.
He doesn't like condone their actions, but he acknowledges the underlying factors that contribute to their choices, you know, and he encourages them to channel their energy into positive pursuits, to focus on education, employment, and family responsibilities.
It's about showing them that real Islam is not about destruction, but about like building and creating and contributing to the betterment of humanity.
He uses this powerful imagery comparing like the state of many young Muslims to being like socially dead.
Wow.
And he challenges them to like come up out of the trash and become like the treasure of Islam.
It's a powerful message, both a wake-up call and a call to action. He sees the youth as the future of the ummah and urges them to like embrace their potential and become agents of positive change.
He really believes in their capacity for greatness. And he challenges them to like live up to the ideals of Islam through their actions and their character.
It's a message of hope and possibility, a reminder that the future of Islam isn't like predetermined.
It's being shaped right now by the choices and actions of each individual, particularly the younger generation.
And speaking of challenges, he dives into some specific issues facing young Muslims, particularly the difficulties they face in getting married.
He doesn't shy away from sharing some pretty stark statistics, especially about the UK, highlighting the alarming number of young Muslims, particularly women, who remain unmarried for years.
He also points out that added complexity of like men seeking additional wives while many are still searching for their first marriage.
It creates this difficult dynamic.
It does.
And he links these issues to like broader social trends, like the influence of Western culture and the struggle to like maintain Islamic values in a secular environment.
And he even mentions like the alarming rates of Muslim girls getting involved in relationships with non-Muslims and the prevalence of premarital pregnancies.
It's a very sobering look at the consequences of like straying from Islamic guidelines. But he doesn't just like point fingers, he offers solutions. He challenges like the cultural norms that have seeped into Muslim communities, arguing that many problems actually stem from practices that contradict Islamic principles.
So he's critical of prioritizing cultural traditions
over the sunnah of the Prophet. He uses a powerful analogy saying that like culture is holding Islam captive, preventing its true beauty and wisdom from shining through.
So it's a challenge to like examine our own beliefs and practices.
It is.
And identify where cultural norms might be, like obscuring the true teachings of Islam.
He urges a return to the sunnah as the ultimate guide for understanding marriage and shaping our actions.
So moving from the challenges to the solutions, how does he approach like the Islamic perspective on marriage itself?
He's very clear and direct. Like he dismantles the myth of platonic relationships in Islam, stating that the only permissible relationship between men and women is through marriage. He reiterates the importance of marriage in like fulfilling half of our faith and, you know, furthering the human race ethically.
He also stresses like approaching marriage with the right intentions. Debunking this whole notion of like convenience marriages.
And emphasizing that it's a serious commitment requiring consummation and a genuine desire to build a life together.
He even like outlines the 4 essential elements of marriage in Islam: mahr, witnesses, proposal and acceptance, and consummation, leaving no room for like ambiguity or cultural misinterpretations.
He's very thorough in his explanation, making sure there's like no confusion about the Islamic guidelines. But he also acknowledges the very real challenges that young Muslims face, you know, like controlling their desires, navigating like the complexities of technology, and, you know, dealing with cultural practices that clash with Islamic principles.
This is a holistic approach addressing both the spiritual and practical aspects.
Absolutely. He reminds us that marriage is not just this like social contract, but a sacred bond, a spiritual journey, and a path to completing half of our faith.
His exploration of marriage is like insightful.
It is.
Empowering, and provides a clear understanding of like the Islamic perspective while offering practical guidance for navigating the complexities of marriage in today's world.
He leaves us with this message of hope and possibility, reminding us that like aligning our actions with Islamic teachings unlocks the keys to a fulfilling life, both in this world and the next.
Now, shifting gears a bit, Yasin also delves into the dynamics within the Muslim community, particularly focusing on what he calls traumatized scholars.
It's a provocative term.
It is.
He uses it to describe individuals who have experienced some form of intellectual or spiritual trauma, perhaps, like through encountering challenging ideas during their studies, facing persecution for their beliefs, or witnessing hypocrisy within religious institutions.
And he argues that this trauma can lead to like a defensive and rigid mindset.
Exactly, making them like overly protective of their interpretations and intolerant of, alternative perspectives.
So he's observing that this often manifests as like religious chauvinism.
Yeah, a form of intellectual elitism that hinders like genuine dialogue and critical thinking within the community.
Yeah, it's an important observation because it sheds light on the factors that can stifle intellectual and spiritual growth.
His intention isn't like to disrespect scholars, but to acknowledge the human element in scholarship and how personal experiences can shape our interpretations and interactions.
So he urges scholars to approach knowledge with humility.
Exactly.
And create spaces for open and respectful dialogue.
Yeah.
Recognizing their own limitations and the potential for bias.
This call for intellectual humility is crucial, especially in the digital age where access to information is unprecedented and diverse perspectives are readily available.
It's a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is an ongoing journey that requires humility, open-mindedness, and a willingness to engage with complexity. Now, shifting focus to the institutional level, Yasin explores the dynamics of power and control within Muslim organizations and communities, and his comparison to the Catholic Church, which he refers to as the Catholicism of Islam, is quite striking.
He argues that similar tendencies toward centralization, hierarchy, and controlling the narrative are emerging in certain segments of the Muslim community.
He identifies characteristics centralized religious interpretation, limited space for critical theological discourse, and suppression of alternative interpretations.
These trends are concerning, especially in the digital age where information is democratized. And individuals have more opportunities to engage with diverse perspectives.
So he challenges Muslim institutions to adapt to this reality. Embrace transparency and accountability, and engage in open dialogue with those who hold differing views.
It's a call for a more inclusive and dynamic
approach to Islamic scholarship and leadership.
Yasin's analysis of these dynamics is insightful and challenging, reminding us that power dynamics and human fallibility can influence even the realm of faith.
It's a call to be vigilant, to think critically, and to be willing to challenge the status quo when necessary.
Now, taking a step back, he also explores the global trends shaping religious landscapes in the 21st century, observing both convergences and divergences across various faith traditions.
He points out a growing trend toward what he calls theological recalibration, where traditional boundaries are being challenged and new interpretations of faith are emerging.
So he argues that Muslim institutions must be responsive to these evolving realities.
They do.
And engage with the challenges and opportunities presented by, globalization, technology, interconnectedness.
Exactly. And he calls for a more nuanced and contextual understanding of Islamic principles.
Yeah, one that takes into account the diverse experiences of Muslims around the globe.
He advocates for moving away from rigid interpretations towards a more dynamic and flexible approach.
Exactly.
That recognizes the need for like solutions tailored to specific contexts.
This isn't about like compromising core principles, but recognizing their timeless relevance and like finding creative ways to apply them to contemporary challenges.
His exploration of these global trends is like fascinating.
It is.
And highlights the dynamic nature of faith in the 21st century.
It underscores the need for adaptation and evolution. If Muslim institutions and scholars are to like remain relevant to future generations.
And this leads us to like one of the most compelling and impactful sections of his book, The Phenomenon of New Muslims in the West.
He frames this as both like this remarkable gift and a weighty responsibility. Yeah, seeing like this influx of converts as a sign of Allah's mercy and a revitalization of the ummah.
He highlights this incredible statistic that more people are embracing Islam in Western societies than in like all Muslim countries combined.
It's a pretty significant shift that, you know, challenges conventional narratives and highlights the changing dynamics of the global Muslim community.
He delves into the reasons behind this phenomenon, arguing that, you know, many in the West are disillusioned with materialism, secularism, and the like spiritual void of modern life.
They're searching for meaning and purpose and a moral compass, and finding that in the holistic teachings of Islam.
He also acknowledges the role of technology in facilitating this trend.
The internet has broken down barriers and created unprecedented access to information about Islam. People can like explore teachings, connect with Muslims globally, and learn about lived experiences.
So it's created a global marketplace of ideas.
It has.
Where Islam is accessible to like anyone with an internet connection.
But he doesn't just like celebrate the influx of new Muslims. He, you know, outlines the responsibilities that come with embracing the faith.
Emphasizing like seeking knowledge. Understanding the Quran and Sunnah. And embodying Islamic principles in daily life.
He stresses integrating into the Muslim community, connecting with, you know, fellow believers, seeking guidance from knowledgeable scholars, and contributing to the betterment of the ummah.
He clarifies that it's not about like assimilation or erasing individuality, but recognizing that like Islam thrives on unity, elaboration, and supporting one another on this path to righteousness.
And he addresses the crucial role of born Muslims in this process as well.
He calls on them to embrace their new brothers and sisters with open arms, share their knowledge, be patient, and create these like welcoming and inclusive environments.
It's about fostering a sense of belonging and recognizing that, you know, a new Muslim success ultimately strengthens the entire ummah.
He reminds us that, you know, Prophet Muhammad himself exemplified this, like welcoming and integrating new members, establishing those bonds of brotherhood that foster unity and purpose.
It's a timeless model that emphasizes Islam's ability to like transcend tribalism, ethnicity, and cultural background.
Yasin's exploration of this phenomenon is like both inspiring and thought-provoking.
It highlights the transformative power of Islam to resonate with people from diverse backgrounds and bring about positive change in the world.
It's a reminder that the ummah is constantly evolving.
It is.
And being enriched by the contributions of, you know, new members.
It's a message of hope and possibility that challenges us to embrace our shared humanity and work together towards a just and compassionate world.
Now let's dive a little deeper into Yasin's message for like new Muslims specifically. He acknowledges the unique challenges they face. Especially in Western societies where they're navigating a new culture.
And set of social norms.
And like a whole set of social norms.
He recognizes the potential for confusion and disorientation. Particularly with like the diverse interpretations and practices.
Within the Muslim community. But his message is like reassuring.
It is.
And it provides like this guidance. He encourages them to embrace their newfound faith with confidence and joy, to seek knowledge, to connect with supportive Muslims, and cultivate a strong relationship with God.
He offers practical advice, urging them not to, discard their pre-existing good values, their education, family values, common sense, professional skills.
So he's challenging this idea that embracing Islam requires, abandoning one's identity or rejecting, all aspects of one's culture.
He emphasizes that Islam complements and enhances our, inherent goodness. Providing a framework for a meaningful life, and empowering us to become our best selves.
He also stresses the importance of, distinguishing between Islam as a faith and the cultural practices that might be, prevalent in some Muslim communities.
He encourages them to seek knowledge from, authentic sources. Rely on the Quran and Sunnah, and avoid blindly following cultural norms that might contradict Islamic principles.
This is crucial, for helping new Muslims navigate the complexities of the community and develop a clear understanding of what is truly Islamic.
His message is one of welcome and empowerment, recognizing, the unique contributions and perspectives of new Muslims and their potential to revitalize the Ummah.
He encourages them to embrace their new identity, to seek knowledge, to connect with others, and to contribute to society with compassion and dedication.
His message is a testament to, the universality of Islam, its ability to transcend boundaries and unite people from diverse backgrounds under, the banner of faith.
Now, shifting focus to, the role of born Muslims in supporting and integrating new converts, Yasin emphasizes that this is a collective duty.
It is.
Like an obligation for every member of the Ummah.
He reminds us of the Prophet Muhammad's example in establishing bonds of brotherhood between the Muhajirun and the Ansar, fostering, unity and shared purpose.
It's a timeless model for building a strong and inclusive community.
He urges born Muslims to be welcoming, patient, understanding, and supportive, creating an environment where new Muslims feel valued, respected, and empowered.
So it's not about assimilation or enforcing cultural conformity, but recognizing the unique contributions of new Muslims and creating spaces where they can thrive.
He highlights the importance of providing access to Islamic knowledge, mentorship opportunities, social events, and practical assistance for navigating everyday life.
He encourages mindfulness in language and interaction. Avoiding jargon, being patient with questions, and offering consistent support.
It's a call for compassion, understanding, and a deep sense of responsibility, recognizing that, the success of new Muslims ultimately benefits the entire Ummah.
He also highlights the potential for new Muslims to bring fresh perspectives and insights. Challenging conventional thinking and contributing to the intellectual and spiritual vitality of the community.
His message is both challenging and inspiring, pushing us to step outside our comfort zones, embrace diversity, extend a helping hand, and create a truly welcoming and inclusive environment.
So it's a vision of a united and thriving Ummah, enriched by the contributions of all its members, regardless of background or time within the faith.
It's a reminder that Islam is about mercy, compassion, and brotherhood, and our collective success depends on living up to these values.
Now, moving beyond specific advice for new and born Muslims, Yasin explores this broader social phenomenon of Muslim reverts in Western societies, and he starts by highlighting the unique advantages they possess.
He points out the benefits of democratic societies, freedoms, opportunities, access to education, economic prospects, legal protections, often lacking in other parts of the world.
He sees this as a blessing.
He does.
That should be, appreciated and utilized to the fullest.
He encourages Western-born Muslims to excel in their studies, pursue their passions, contribute to society, and become examples of the beauty and wisdom of Islam through their actions.
But he also acknowledges the unique challenges they face.
The pressure to conform to secular norms, the pervasiveness of materialism and consumerism, and the constant bombardment of messages that contradict Islamic values.
So he advises them to develop a strong sense of identity, ground themselves in Islamic knowledge, seek support from like-minded individuals and build strong families and like nurturing environments for their children to thrive spiritually and intellectually.
He stresses the importance of engaging with like wider society, building bridges, challenging stereotypes, advocating for justice, contributing positively to their communities.
It's a message of like both empowerment and responsibility, right? Encouraging them to embrace like their unique position, make a difference, and represent Islam positively while upholding its values.
He urges them to be like beacons of compassion and understanding, contributing to a more just and equitable world.
It's a challenging yet like inspiring vision.
It is.
That calls for Western-born Muslims to like rise to the occasion, embrace their potential, and shape the future of Islam in the West.
And speaking of challenges, he goes on to explore this like complex issue of religious authority and how it impacts, modern Islamic practice. He observes that many new Muslims in the West grapple with like questions of legitimacy and authenticity, uncertain about like who to trust and how to navigate Islamic jurisprudence.
He acknowledges these concerns, recognizing that the lack of like a centralized religious authority in Islam can create like this confusion, especially without a strong scholarly tradition in the West.
It cautions against like blindly following charismatic figures or self-proclaimed experts, emphasizing the importance of seeking knowledge from like qualified and reputable scholars who are grounded in, the Quran and Sunnah.
So he encourages like critical thinking, questioning interpretations that seem questionable, and relying on like reason and intuition.
It's a message of caution, but also empowerment. Advising against like blind faith, while encouraging new Muslims to like take ownership of their religious journey, actively seek knowledge, develop their understanding, and like make informed decisions about their practice.
He recognizes the realities of like the modern world.
He does.
Where access to information and diverse perspectives is like abundant.
He encourages them to be discerning in their pursuit of knowledge, seek guidance from like trustworthy sources, and develop their own like informed and authentic understanding of Islam.
It's a powerful message, empowering new Muslims to navigate the complexities of faith in the modern world and become like active participants in shaping the future of Islam.
He highlights the importance of like recognizing the difference between Islam as a faith and like the cultural norms that might have been adopted by Muslims in different parts of the world.
He encourages them to like critically examine practices, question their origins, and ensure that their actions are aligned with the Quran and Sunnah.
Exactly.
Not just like inherited traditions.
It's about developing a more authentic and informed understanding of their faith.
He also addresses like the balance between integrating into the Muslim community and retaining, their unique identity and experiences.
He acknowledges that like the transition to Islam can be challenging. Especially for those from like different cultural backgrounds. And encourages, finding supportive communities, seeking mentorship, and embracing the diversity of the Muslim world while staying true to themselves.
It's a beautiful message, recognizing
it is
like the inherent value of each individual and the importance of creating inclusive spaces where everyone feels welcome.
And throughout his book, he consistently emphasizes the need for action, reminding us that faith isn't just about, beliefs and rituals.
It's about embodying those beliefs in daily life.
Exactly.
And making a positive impact.
He challenges new Muslims to be active in their communities, contribute their talents, engage in like social activism, and work towards a more just and equitable society.
This call to action is like a recurring theme.
It is.
Reminding us that Islam is, a dynamic way of life that calls for us to be agents of change.
As we like wrap this deep dive into Shaykh Khalid Yasin's book, I'm struck by like the breadth and depth of his insights.
He has covered everything.
He has.
From foundational principles to the complexities of like navigating the 21st century as a Muslim.
He challenged conventional thinking, offered like practical guidance, and inspired us with his vision of a thriving and engaged Muslim community.
Yeah, his work is like incredibly valuable for anyone seeking to understand the challenges and opportunities facing Muslims today.
His message of hope and possibility is like a beacon of light.
It is.
In a world that can often feel, uncertain.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to turn it back to you. Like, what resonated most with you from Yasin's work?
What new perspectives did you gain?
What questions or challenges are you still pondering?
Remember, this deep dive is just the beginning. The journey of faith is ongoing, and it requires, continuous effort, reflection, and a willingness to engage with new ideas.
And as Shaykh Khalid Yasin reminds us, the sun of Islam is rising in the West.
What role will you play in shaping its path?
We'll leave you with that thought.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
May Allah guide us all.
And grant us the wisdom and courage to live our faith in a way that benefits ourselves and humanity as a whole.
Yeah, he sees it as a sign of Allah's mercy and a source of fresh energy for the ummah.
Yeah, like a revitalization.
Exactly.
He even uses this phrase, a sign that Allah is not finished with the West yet.
I love that.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah, it's powerful.
And then he mentions a statistic that more people are embracing Islam in Western societies than in all Muslim countries combined.
It's amazing. And
it's huge.
He sees it as, both a sign of hope, but also a responsibility.
Okay.
He urges new Muslims to hold on to the good values they brought with them, the things that drew them to Islam in the first place.
He believes that those experiences and perspectives are valuable assets to the Muslim community.
Yeah. He encourages new Muslims to actively contribute, to use their unique strengths to benefit the ummah.
And he has a message for born Muslims as well, right?
Absolutely.
He calls for a sense of collective responsibility to nurture and support these new members of the faith.
He sees the potential of new Muslims to really shape the future of Islam in the West. And he emphasizes the need for the entire community to, embrace them, help them grow and thrive.
I think that's such an important point because it really emphasizes that, the ummah is not this monolithic entity.
Right.
It's constantly being shaped and reshaped.
Exactly. It's dynamic.
By these new voices and perspectives.
And it's beautiful.
And I think Yasin does such a great job of capturing that dynamism.
He does. He really does.
And that sense of possibility.
Yeah, he's very hopeful.
Yeah.
I like that about his work. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, exploring Shaykh Khalid Yasin's vision for Muslims in the 21st century.
Yeah, from the challenges of modernity to the internal dynamics within the Muslim community to this remarkable phenomenon of new Muslims in the West.
It's been a really rich and thought-provoking conversation, and I think what makes Yasin's work so compelling is that he doesn't shy away from the tough questions.
He doesn't.
He confronts those complexities head on, but he always offers solutions.
Presents this hopeful vision, a path forward for Muslims in the 21st century.
He doesn't just diagnose the problem.
He equips us with the tools and inspiration to address them.
Exactly.
His insights are so valuable, I think.
They are.
For anyone who really wants to understand the state of the Muslim world today.
And his message of hope and possibility is so powerful.
It is.
Especially in these times.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to turn it back to our listeners.
Yeah.
What resonated most with you from Yasin's work? What new perspectives did you gain? What questions or challenges are you still pondering? Remember, this deep dive is just the beginning.
The journey of faith is ongoing.
Right.
It requires continuous effort, reflection, and a willingness to engage with new ideas.
And as Shaykh Khalid Yasin reminds us, the sun of Islam is rising in the West.
What role will you play in shaping its path?
That's something for you to ponder.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on this journey, and may Allah guide us all.
And grant us the strength and wisdom to live a life that reflects the true beauty and compassion of Islam.